The Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, has been a part of Scottish folklore for centuries. Countless reports of sightings and mysterious photographs have fueled the legend, keeping the world captivated by the idea of a giant creature lurking in the depths of Loch Ness. But after years of investigation, we finally have 6 solid reasons why Nessie may not exist at all. From scientific studies to geological evidence, these facts suggest that the mystery of Loch Ness may be just that. A myth. The first famous photograph of Nessie, taken in 1934, became known as the surgeon's photo, which was later revealed to be a hoax. It was just a toy submarine with a plastic head. Yet the legend has not faded. Every year, tourists visit Loch Ness, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive creature. But scientists Daniel Loxton and Donald R. Prothero have made it their mission to unravel the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster once and for all. In their book, Abominable Science: Origins of the Yeti, Nessie, and Other Famous Cryptids, Loxton and Prothero carefully examine various legendary creatures, including Nessie, and they argue that the Loch Ness Monster is a myth. Through their research, they point to scientific facts and findings that explain why Nessie could not possibly exist. Let's take a look at their reasoning and explore why the Loch Ness Monster, as much as people want to believe in it, is likely just a myth. 1. The unlikely existence of Nessie. One of the biggest arguments against the Loch Ness Monster's existence is the lack of solid evidence. According to Prothero, who is a paleontologist and geologist, it would be impossible for a creature like Nessie to live in Loch Ness for several reasons. First, for such a large creature to survive, there would need to be an entire population. A single Nessie could not survive without others to breed and continue the species. However, there has been no evidence found of any other creatures like Nessie in Loch Ness. There have been no discoveries of bones, no signs of offspring, and no reliable reports of multiple creatures living there. Loch Ness itself is also too small to support a giant creature. According to the Loch Ness and Morar project, the lake can only support about 22 tons of fish. For a creature as large as Nessie, this simply wouldn't be enough food. If Nessie were real, it would need a much larger food supply and an ecosystem that could support a giant predator. Loch Ness just doesn't provide that. 2. The cold water problem. Another problem is the temperature of Loch Ness. Nessie is often described as a cold-blooded reptile, like a plesiosaur, a type of sea reptile that lived millions of years ago. However, cold-blooded creatures need warm temperatures to survive, and Loch Ness is far too cold for such an animal to live. Prothero explains that plesiosaurs are tropical creatures, and that reptiles in Scotland are rare. There are only a few species of reptiles that live in the cold climate of Scotland, and they are all specially adapted to handle the cold. But a large, cold-blooded creature like Nessie would not be able to survive in the icy waters of Loch Ness, especially without any special adaptations. Even if people argue that Nessie is warm-blooded like seals or dolphins, a creature the size of Nessie would be out of place in the loch. There is no record of a warm-blooded creature like this ever evolving in such a cold environment. This makes the idea of a giant warm-blooded reptile or mammal in Loch Ness even more unlikely than a cold-blooded plesiosaur. The Ice Age problem. Things get even more complicated when you consider the history of Loch Ness itself. The lake was covered by ice just 18,000 years ago, during the last Ice Age. At that time, there was no Loch Ness, just ice. If Nessie or any other large creature like it existed, there would have been nowhere for it to live during that period. Even if we imagine that Nessie somehow survived in the sea, it would have had to migrate into Loch Ness after the ice melted. But Loch Ness is above sea level, and its connection to the sea is very weak. For a sea creature to enter the loch, it would have had to swim through cold, shallow rivers, which would have been very difficult for a large creature like a plesiosaur. There is simply no plausible way that a sea creature could have made its way into Loch Ness. especially given the shallow and narrow nature of the waterways. The cultural influence and birth of the legend. Loxton and Prothero also examine how the Loch Ness Monster myth grew over time, and they suggest that cultural influences played a big role in the creation and persistence of the legend. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, dinosaurs were becoming increasingly popular, with many exhibitions of dinosaur fossils being held at museums, sparking public interest in prehistoric creatures. This fascination with dinosaurs likely contributed to the rise of the Loch Ness Monster legend. Then, in 1933, the release of the movie King Kong, which featured prehistoric creatures running amok, coincided with a rise in modern-day Loch Ness Monster sightings. 5. The persistence of the myth. Even though scientific evidence overwhelmingly suggests that the Loch Ness Monster does not exist, the legend continues to persist. Every year, tourists flock to Loch Ness hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious creature. This phenomenon brings in millions of pounds to the local economy. Loxton and Prothero point out that the persistence of the Loch Ness Monster myth is not just about people wanting to believe in a cryptid, but it also has a lot to do with the money that the legend brings in. The Loch Ness Monster has become a major part of Scottish folklore and the identity of the area. Nessie has been commercialized in a variety of ways, from souvenirs to guided tours. It has become an enduring symbol of Scotland, and the continued belief in Nessie supports the local economy in a big way. Loxton and Prothero argue that the myth of Nessie is self-perpetuating. The more people believe in it, the more tourists it attracts, keeping the legend alive. 6. The economic and cultural legacy of Nessie. Nessie's legend is not just about belief in a monster, it's also about the economic and cultural benefits that come from the story. The Loch Ness Monster has become a symbol of mystery and intrigue, drawing visitors from all over the world. As Loxton and Prothero explain, Nessie has become much more than just a cryptid. It is a symbol of Scottish culture and history. The idea of a giant creature hiding in the depths of Loch Ness taps into humanity's fascination with the unknown. People are naturally curious about what lies beneath the surface, and Nessie represents that desire for mystery and discovery. Conclusion: the end of the mystery. Despite the convincing arguments made by Loxton and Prothero, the Loch Ness Monster legend is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. The combination of cultural influences, economic benefits, and the human fascination with mystery has kept the myth alive. While the scientific evidence suggests that Nessie does not exist, the legend continues to captivate people's imaginations. For now, the search for Nessie may be over in a scientific sense, but the legend persists. Whether or not Nessie is real, its place in popular culture and Scottish folklore is secure. The Loch Ness Monster will continue to capture the hearts of people around the world for generations to come. The mystery may never be solved, but for many, that's part of the appeal. The search for Nessie goes on, whether or not the creature exists.